when you do a competition, understand that, especially if you're comparing yourself against the leaderboard, that the people that are in it, as well as the testing body, is constantly shifting. So you have to take it with a grain of salt and try to be objective, try to involve other people with it. And then when you go about taking a step back, so to speak, then it's like as you start to think about how to plan, again, try to involve other people in that and like just pick things that are like gonna make sense based on proximity, quality of the event, where you want to go, how much money you got. It's not that complicated.
For sure.
The Fitness Movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all one place, zorfitness.com.
Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a little bit of CrossFit Open stuff. Not so much like, line by line what we are, not necessarily critiquing the tests as much as just like big picture takeaways from how to process performance. And then also like how you could do that projecting out into the future for basically using competitions as checkpoints throughout your year. So I don't know if, Chris, you had this at your gyms or the other people that you coach where, almost every time somebody goes through an open, just I think because it's the volume of people more than anything else, people tend to get discouraged because they just see like a massive number next to their name and realize that how many people were actually beating them, combined with like, I know how much energy I'm putting into this, and people often like assign some self-worth along with where they finish on the leaderboard.
Yeah, I mean, I had to have a conversation with a client this year. So they did the repeat workout with the bar muscle ups, and her score was not as good as the last time. And I know they like to make a big deal about it, like, can you beat your score from last time? And I think it's cool to try to do that, but like with her, she opened up a gym, took some major steps back in her training, and then now is ramping back up. And that's always something like that style of upper body pulling gymnastics has always been a struggle relative to the rest of her fitness. And so it's like,
And
hey,
she's 3 years younger, right?
no, it's weird how timelines work, father time. So my thing is like, and she was good about it, right? But I had the conversation of like,
Yeah.
hey, we just started getting back to like being able to string two together at a time. Like, don't start to look at your old self in that way. Like let's just do little PRs. Like let's PR. Oh, I did more in a row than I did 6 months ago, right? And I think a lot of it is the attitude you carry in. Like I was nowhere close to my time in 2022, but it was like I also didn't have the delusion that I'd be anywhere close, right? Because I'm not
Yeah.
training nearly as much.
Or like the motivation when like, you're like, when you're in your competitive mindset, you can't replicate that when you're not.
Correct.
And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that people can get wrapped into, especially really competitive athletes. They like have this really important date on their calendar. It's not say it was the Open, let's say it was some other competition. Like, okay, let's gear up really hard for this, and they get all excited about it. They train really hard up until that time, and then they try to like match that intensity after their competition. It's like you can't do that.
Can't do it. But it's also tough too, and this is unique to CrossFit. It's like you can train really hard leading up to the event, and then for something like the Open, maybe not as much an in-person event, but for something like the Open, it's like, oh, well, I didn't see any of the movements that I've been doing my progressions on, right? It's not like
Yeah.
you're training for like people do training camps for MMA, right? And it's like you
You're
don't
gonna get punched in the face. It's just
right,
how
like, you
hard.
don't yeah, exactly. Or like, hey, I know I'm gonna be in jujitsu scrambles, or I know whatever,
You know
or
the rules.
yeah, exactly. You know
Uh,
the that's a whole nother separate conversation.
but
Um,
honestly, like that's the most true thing I've ever heard. It's like if we everybody knew that every year it was burpees over a dumbbell, dumbbell snatches, thrusters, chest to bar, and rowing and wall walks. It's like, well, it kind of is. But if you knew that, then it would be a lot easier to be like, hey, I am able to actually use this as a measuring stick for my fitness.
right. And that
Furthermore, it has to be the same people doing the competition. Like, it's not great for using this as a measuring stick if, you know, 2/3 of the non-competitive people drop out and there's a much higher percentage of the competitive population doing the workouts.
That was another thing I was going to bring up is like people would see the percentages. Maybe they're not like, maybe you're someone who's used to seeing like an 85th percentile, right, in the open, and all of a sudden you see a 75th this year, and it's like it's because 30% of the field decided not to sign up. And granted, you got some people like at our gyms. There were some people who were nervous about doing the open, so they did it. They did all the workouts, but didn't sign up on CrossFit. Like we had people like that. So you did have some people who are not super competitive sign up, and then, like you said, that intensifies the field because the competitive people outside of the handful that were trying to make a statement, they signed up because they're trying to get to the next level. And so, yeah, that sent the message that was like, oh, I'm not as fit as last year. And it's like, well, you're actually at a percentage of significantly less people who are significantly more competitive than last year.
Yes. So, like, and it's very funny because I literally had that exact experience personally where I was like, the announcements came out about it being just online semis, and online semis qualifies you straight to the games. I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to do the competitive season this year for CrossFit. Like, still compete and everything, just not sign up for the open and, not do online semis because, like, that's not enjoyable for me. But then I qualified for NorCal, which is a sanctioned event, essentially a semifinal. And if you want to have an option for a games bid, you had to finish top 1% in the open. So I was like, okay, here we go. We got to at least get top 1%,
Yeah.
which I was like, it shouldn't be that hard because I've done it every year so far that I signed up for the open. And it ended up being where, like, it came down to the last workout and I had to repeat it to, like, kind of squeeze my way through.
Right.
So I was just, like, completely caught off guard by just the fact that, like, wow, like, way more people who are actually doing this are taking it seriously versus just, like, a lot of people who signed up who are just being very recreational about things. And that skews your perspective of it if you've been doing it for the last 3, 5, 8 years continuously.
Yeah, so because for someone like you who's been continuously at 99%, like I would say a big chunk of the people who didn't sign up this year are not the tip of the spear, right? They're the people underneath you.
No,
And so,
I mean, again, there's going to be people at the very top who were highly impacted on an emotional level, understandably so, where they don't want to do the season.
right.
And there's a lot of people who are just like just under that, like the cusp of that, right? Like elite, sub-elite level, who are very excited to still qualify for higher level events, and they don't really have that much of a personal connection to what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to sign up and shoot their shot.
Right.
And
so
I think
then,
that's kind of what we saw this year.
yeah, because then that skews the percentages.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, like, listen, from someone who I got to participate in the Open this year as almost like a member because I'm not involved in the day-to-day as much. But as someone who's run that stuff in years past, I was ecstatic when they moved to three weeks. Ecstatic. Because
I was never a gym owner in the 5-week format, but 3
Oh.
weeks is plenty. I couldn't imagine doing 2 more.
Dude, it was just like I'm just watching, like, Karen wander into the gym just like dragging herself because she's like just so shot. Like, I got to do this again, and I got to do burpees over a bar and thrusters, and
Or like
there's
everybody
no
who thinks that they can qualify for a regional and they're
Yes.
like redoing the workout for the 5th time. You're
Yeah.
like, all right, let me get a score sheet, dude.
I literally this was before I started
My
working
day's shot because I'm judging people.
yeah, this was right before I was working at Station Athletics. They had a team who was trying to qualify for regionals at the time, and they were right on the cusp. And my boss and one of the guys who would have been on the team ended up redoing that thruster double under workout. It was like 9 thrusters and like
17.5.
yes, ended up redoing it like 5 times, and they were so adrenally shot at the end that this kid like forgot how to do double unders. Like, he just couldn't do it. And so it's like that's how it was. It was a complete
Yes.
And so to shift to 3 weeks was like a godsend. With that being said, there's only
Less
so many aspects of
points.
fitness that you can test in 3 weeks. And so if you're someone who's super strong, you didn't get to display that in this Open.
And you're really hamstrung when you do 3 tests, 3 scores, and you make it inclusive.
Right.
Now you have really fit class members who are able to outpace some people who have good strength and good skills and are a very well-rounded competitor because just frankly, like, not a super well-rounded snapshot of fitness got taken into account, in my opinion.
Right. And so it's one of those things where, I mean, listen, the very best are still going to get through,
Yep.
right? But for your average gym member who, again, is used to finishing at a certain percentage, and maybe the workouts that come out are not in their favor, and there's only 3 workouts to pull from, you know, it can be tough for them to see a different number on the leaderboard. But you have to remember that, again, this is a sport, and it's a sport we sign up for, where you literally don't know the questions on the test when you go into it. You could have been studying math and you go in and it's Spanish, right? Like that's just how it is. And so you have to be willing to accept that. And that's part of what keeps us coming back, is the fact that it's like it's always changing. Now, I wish the rules would stay the same, but I do think that is something
Constantly
to
varied
remember.
formats. Constantly varied season structure. Anyway, we don't need to rain on that the whole time. Yeah, I guess what my kind of point of this is not for us to like, vent out frustrations, although we probably each have some, and there's other things that were like really good about it. But I guess my point of like having this conversation was more of from an athlete mindset perspective of like, you need to understand what the open is, why
Yes.
you perform the way you did, and have ideally somebody to process that with outside of yourself, because it's very easy to be unhelpfully critical of certain elements and not taking the whole picture into account.
Yeah.
Right. And that's true for anything in life, right? If you're gonna make an important financial decision, maybe you should consult Tiff with it, right? Like it's probably a good idea to bounce some ideas off somebody other than yourself, to have that support, right? And I think when you're so heavily invested into something, you just can't see it for what it is. That's the reality. Like, how many parents do you know that think their kids aren't super cute?
None.
None. Are there not super cute kids?
Yeah. There's
Yes,
some
there's a
uglies out
lot
there.
of ugly kids out there. I'm sorry to say, right? You can't be objective because you're too close to it, right? You care
Right.
too much. And that's the same thing with like your own performance, right? And it's kind of the opposite, right? Where it's really easy to view yourself in a harsh negative light a lot of the time after a competition, especially when things didn't go the way you wanted them to go. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think A, having somebody to process that with, B, understanding what the open actually was and the limitations of it, and then 3, like, okay, what useful information is actually there that I can gather and help myself make informed decisions moving forward about my training and competing.
Yeah.
And again, that's really helpful if you have somebody to go over that with you and kind of debrief you through that process. But even if you don't, I think having some sort of structure in place that, like, okay, I do everything I can to be ready to compete. I compete to the best of my ability. And then after I compete, I debrief somehow, take some notes, journal, dialogue with somebody about the process, get on a call with my coach, whatever it is, to have some sort of regular routine that you go through that helps you to kind of stay grounded in yeah, more of a realistic and like long-term focused mentality towards the whole thing.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's one data point in your fitness journey.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like there's always something that could be gleaned from it. But if you use it as the be all and end all of like, oh my gosh, I am less fit because I did worse, and because I'm less fit, I'm just a sack of crap of a human being. It's like that's not good for anybody. Especially because, like you said, at the end of the day, there were almost 250,000 people who signed up for this, and 1% of that 250 get to move on to like the next competitive stage, right? Now they have this community cup, which frankly I don't even completely understand, but at the end of the day, like 1% of those people get to move on to the next level. And so the remaining 99%, you shouldn't just be like sad, right? It's like, why are we just signing up to be sad? We should be enjoying the event and enjoying pushing ourselves. And then if you are someone who's competitive, who is not in that 1%, then again, it's a data point. Did you find something that, oh, I didn't realize that this was a weakness. Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, I did improve on this, right?
Yeah,
It's
and
important
that's
to
one of
see
the
that.
things I always try to frame it for athletes. Like, they're like, oh man, I got exposed in the burpee workout. Like, man, I didn't go way the way I thought. I was like, hey, that's great. Now we know, right? And we can
Right.
actually do something about it, where it's like, if we didn't know, that's not a good situation. Now we know. So again, that's maybe one way to think about it. That's the way I try to often frame it for athletes. But then also, like, don't just use the open as your measuring stick. I think that's one of the things that's an easy trap to fall into. Again, as we like mentioned before, like there's too many variables that are changing within that for that to be your measuring stick. You need to find more objective measures, and I would say probably find some things that are like you versus it being you versus a leaderboard.
Yeah.
Right. So like test retest of your same things, right? Like, what was my Murph time last year? What was it this year? Like simple
Right.
things like that are a much better and very accurate measure of your fitness versus where you finish on the leaderboard. I understand the constantly varied thing, but again, there's too many variables in place for you to really hang your hat on that. So I would say like maybe be a little bit more, find more objective measures of actual fitness. And then when you're going to, I mean, I think most people do, if they're on the competitive side of fitness, most people don't really enjoy the online qualifier thing. So like
Right.
find in-person events that you can go compete in live environments and again, see where you actually stack up when you have one chance to do the workout and execute to the best of your ability. And I feel like most people, that's a much more fun, intrinsically enjoyable, and hopefully like a better true measuring stick of your fitness.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So say somebody did the open and they didn't advance, which is obviously going to be the vast majority of people listening to this. It's like if you were my coach and I didn't advance, right? What maybe would be how you think about, or what would help me to think about kind of going about planning the rest of my like competitive season, let's call it.
Yeah, so the first thing I'm doing is giving you off, right?
No, I'm bad at burpees. I want to work on my
yeah.
burpees.
So one of the things, and again, it depends on the individual. Like something I might do is, like if you're someone, let's frame competitive for a second, right? If you're ultra competitive and you are trying to make the 1% and you just didn't, you are probably redoing these workouts multiple times. And so if you're in that camp and your CrossFit season is over, we're taking off. Like take time off. I'm probably not writing a squat, a rep, a burpee for you for 2 weeks because it's like, let's take a week off. After that, just have some fun, maybe take class, maybe do whatever. And then after that, we'll kind of get into the swing of things. If you are someone who's like recreationally competitive, meaning like you sign up for in-person competitions, but like you did the open workout one time with your community, Friday Night Lights type thing, then it might be less than that. It's like, hey, let's take the beginning of the week off. If you feel good by the end of the week, just jump into class, stay loose with it. And then after that, I'll start designing some stuff for you. But it would be looking at, okay, if you're the former, then it's like, okay, cool. What major competitions do we want to try to qualify for this year, right? So you're maybe looking at a Wadapalooza or a Fitness Experience or a MacFest or one of these NorCal you mentioned, although it is a sanctioned event, but something where it's like, hey, this is an event I want to do, and we're going to use that as like a marker in my year to get like the competitive juices flowing. So then from there, then we build out progressions from there, and then when those workouts come out, we might mix in some specific stuff as we get closer, right? So that's kind of how I would map out the year from there. If you're recreationally competitive, I'm just going to be completely honest. You probably have no idea what competitions you're doing because most of those people tell me about a month before the competition happens. And so,
hey, I saw a poster on my gym's wall for the other place down the road. They're doing a comp. I'm going to sign up.
Yeah. And at the end,
which is not like the end of the world.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Earlier in my career, I might have gotten frustrated with that. Now it's just like, let's just take it for what it is. You're recreationally competitive. And so what happens is like you see a post, you don't think about it. Then your friend is like, we should do it. You hem and haw. And then finally you're like, all right, we'll do it. And it's 3 weeks until the competition, right?
Yep.
So if you're someone who's a good planner, getting that to me, I can work around that. If you're someone who's like most of the people, what I'm doing is building out a progression to work on your weaknesses during that first progression out, and I'm probably doing a 12 week block. That's usually what I program in. And then if a competition gets thrown in there, then it's like, all right, let me try to work in some of these skills around there so at least you're prepped for this competition. So I would say there is a good amount of planning for the people who are planners, but for those recreationally fit people who just like to compete on the weekend competition, it's more mapping out cycles for their weaknesses and then finding ways to manipulate some variables when they want to compete.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I maybe didn't explicitly think this before, but it was like, if you're someone who's taking your fitness very seriously, you're doing double days, you're checking all the boxes, you're not just gonna be like, oh, maybe I'll do this competition coming up.
Right.
Like, like, like those people are typically like, I know this event's coming up in July. It's now April. I want to do that. And I'm also going to have this other one on my calendar. Maybe I'll add this one in depending what you think about it. And then like, I'm taking these very seriously, so let's do a full gear up for it.
Yes.
This is the typical movement selection, like those sorts of things. Like it's a very different conversation than the person who's like, "Hey, saw the poster," and for that person, like they don't want to be going through the progressions for the workouts. They're like, "Hey, let me hit this once, see what it felt like, do some partner practice our synchro burpees, and we'll go hit it."
Yeah.
And I think both of those are appropriate for the population that you're talking about. I think that's
Absolutely.
totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to recognize, like, uh, if in any other sport, right? If I was how many people do you hear like, oh, I just signed up for the turkey trot? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to run the local 5K,
Yeah.
and they weren't running intervals and doing volume training and fartleks to get prepared for this 5K. They're just like, yeah, I'm just going to go run with my family.
Yeah.
But with CrossFit, people get so worked up. It's like, how dare you do that? And it's like, dude, you got to recognize the population you're serving. And so, yeah, if I had I used the term earlier, a tip of the spear type person, someone your skill level or higher who was willy nilly like that, that's a conversation of like, dude, we can't do that. Like, I'm trying to build out progression so that you can qualify for the CrossFit games, maybe. Right.
Yeah. Or probably that conversation is, okay, you can have the day, we'll deload one day beforehand. You'll
Yes.
go do the competition as just like part of your training. We'll use it as like a tune up, see
Yep.
how things go, how you feel with stuff, and enjoy Monday as your deload because you're back to it on Tuesday. Like
Right.
that sort of conversation, right? Like, hey, you can do this, but we don't even have time to gear up for it. So you're not going to be able to take it seriously when you're there, but like you're not going to be fully prepared, and just know that.
Yeah, and those people have a robust enough aerobic system to recover from
and
that
they'll be
in a
fine
day or two. Yes.
Right, yes.
Because they're used to 2 to 3 day meat grinders worth of competitions.
Yeah, and also like I've had like prospective clients like ask me like, hey, like from the conversation we've had so far, like maybe 30-minute, 60-minute call or whatever, it's like, what do you think like training's going to look like? And initially that's like a bit of a challenging conversation because it's like I don't know enough information yet. And it's like typically I'm going to take like, okay, these are your like priority things that are like historically your weaknesses that we need to work on. However, there's also another layer to that, and that's your competitive season. If we're talking about competitive athlete, right? It's like once I know your sort of let's just call it your weaknesses, right? Once we know your weaknesses, the stuff that is gonna need touched on a weekly basis, and then we also know your schedule, that's when those things really get married and start to make a lot more sense, and like the training's actually put to paper. It's like, okay, I know that you need to work on front squatting and burpee density and your toe to bar capacity, right? However, it's really helpful if I know that, okay, you're not competing for another 24 weeks. And when you do that, this is the competition that you're doing. You're likely to see this movement selection. Okay, we can now work on those things up to a certain point. We're going to start to mix them in a certain way. Like all of it starts to be like come really clear on how you'd actually progress that person. And then obviously like when they actually do their training and you see what results come in from that, that's where you build out the next kind of smallest unit of time, which for us is like typically a week, right? So it's like this very, like the further away you get, like no different than like, I don't know if you go look outside and it's hazy because you live in New Jersey. You can only see so far into the future, and it becomes really hazy out there. Whereas like at the closer you get, now you can start to see through all the smog.
There's not smog where I live.
Just sinkholes.
Just the earth falling into itself.
Yeah. And then I would just add that like for people who are, and this is I think probably intuitive to most people, it's like when you're going and thinking about planning competitions, pick the one you're excited about and put those on your calendar first. And then if there's other things to be kind of that are spaced out enough where you can throw something else in that seems fun, go for it, right? And I think for most people, unless you're getting paid to do this, which is probably no one listening to this, then it's like, bro, just do what you want to do, man. Have fun with it, right?
Yeah.
And like, don't be an idiot where they're so close together that you're ruined. And
Yeah.
outside of that, like, there's really no rules. It's like, it's your, fitness career. It's how you want to take it.
Yeah, like when I was competing, again, someone who is competitive but not competitive, if that makes sense. I usually tried to choose one big competition a year as like my thing, right? Because I wasn't qualifying to any regionals or sanctionals out of the open. And so one year I was like, you know what, I want to do Wadapalooza this year. And so it was like I put everything into training to get to Wadapalooza, and we qualified. And then around that was like I maybe did like an in-house comp and maybe something else for funsies. You know what I mean? But nothing that would derail my training for that goal. And then the following year was like, all right, I want to do fitness experience. I haven't been to Texas. I want to do that.
Because it's going to be in the South and super warm.
Yeah. Well, fitness experience was not warm. It was in January.
This when Sam and I went, it was so cold, and John.
Oh,
it was so
yeah.
cold. Oh my gosh.
You get up for your first event, and it's like, dude, it's 40 degrees out. It's 35 degrees out.
I think it was like one of two people who didn't wear a shirt.
Yeah. So that might have been a mistake. I probably should have went back to Miami if I could have. But so yeah, it was like, cool, we're gonna train for this one thing. And all those events were also team, which is also a next level of commitment. And so like for me, it's like, okay, if I'm gonna do this team competition, I'm gonna have to commit a decent amount of time to do team prep as we get closer. And so I can't be doing all these team competitions and then frankly taking hours upon days away from my family and my job. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the approach I would take for someone who, again, is not, like you mentioned, like the 1% looking to make money off of this.
Yeah. And that's a whole other thing, right? It's like, again, the majority of people who are listening to this who are recreational with their competitive fitness, it's like, either pick something that's a good event that's in close proximity where you can, drive there in an afternoon, or pick someplace that's going to be really cool for you to go and be like a really neat experience, which is like why a lot of people go to Wadapalooza, because it's warm and they're from, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and it's miserable in winter. So we want to go somewhere else. Right. So it's like, pick something that just seems like it would be a good time to go to. Right.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and a big part of that is also just like the athlete experience at whatever competition you're at. Right. Like, if you can choose, pick one that's well run.
Yes.
Like, this is not like game changing stuff. Like, this is like the basics that sometimes people just like skip over, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, that's about all I had. I think, again, the big picture stuff is like, when you do a competition, understand that, especially if you're comparing yourself against the leaderboard, that the people that are in it, as well as the testing body, is constantly shifting. So you have to take it with a grain of salt and try to be objective, try to involve other people with it. And then when you go about sort of taking a little bit of time, at least back, taking a step back, so to speak, then it's like, as you start to think about how to plan, again, try to involve other people in that, and like, just pick things that are like gonna make sense, that are based on proximity, quality of the event, where you want to go, how much money you got. It's not that complicated.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, sweet, dude. Thanks for doing this.
Till next time.
Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just started listening to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while, I would encourage you to rate and review the show. And lastly, the best thing that you can do to support our work is also the best thing that you can do for your performance. And that is by hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.